Hello, and welcome to Wine with Wita, the podcast that is dedicated to engaging with health professionals and caregivers in meaningful discussions. I'm your host, Rita Shamoon, or as my clients call me, Wita. I'm a pediatric speech pathologist, and I am so excited to have you here. Each week, we deep dive into connecting you with caregivers and healthcare professionals, sharing their insights, stories, and key takeaways to help you with your child's diagnosis and your journey. Whether you are a parent, healthcare professional, a lifetime learner, or simply a wine enthusiast, you're in the right place. So let's sit back and relax and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone. This is episode 34, the final episode of Wine with Wita for 2024. Look at that. 4-4.
Wow.
I know 4-4 means something wonderful. I know 444 is, but I wonder what 444 is. I have a returning guest on Wine with Wita. It's actually my first ever guest that I had on the podcast. It is the remarkable, inspiring, fabulous Donna Berry, the creator of Interplay. And she is just a joy, not only to learn off, but her magic that she shares with educating so many clinicians and parents about the impact of trauma and the essence of connection is one of the reasons why Rita Shamoon Speech Pathology started. Just before I get into discussing my wonderful work with Donna's wonderful work today, Donna, I went to her course 2 years ago, loved her work online, and I actually fell in love with her Chanel earrings, to be honest. I was like, I love those earrings. I want to buy those earrings. So I bought them. They were stunning. And I love wearing them because they actually remind me of my why. And then a few months later, I went to a course with Gary V that was hosted by Ethan Donati. And he wonderfully spoke about Donna. And I just had like a pinch me moment that again, Donna came into my life or my realm. And I said, you know what? I'm going to contact her. I want to talk with her. And she was my first guest on Wine with Wita. And it was just a full circle moment. And the fact that Donna is my final guest for the year means it was like a 360 for me. So welcome, Donna, back again to Wine with Wita.
So excited. And what a gorgeous introduction. So thank you for that. But also, how amazing. Like, it is really cool to hear you talk about how we first met and what that process was like, because we know that there's signs in the universe, and you followed those. And I think this is the beauty of being able to connect with you. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your work, Donna. As I said, you embody the essence of connection and how that is essential for all relationship building and even working with the client in therapy. You need to have connection. And last time we spoke about connection, the importance of unconditional love. Yeah. And how collectively as a society, we're just missing that connection and being who you authentically are. And what are we teaching our young kids, and how are we fostering and thriving in our relationships? Like, it's so important that we recognize this. But today, I would love to talk about a baby when the mother's pregnant and how mother's experience can impact a child's development in utero. So Donna, the floor is with you.
Well, I just love this topic, which is why when you first asked me to come on and you were like, this is what we're going to talk about, I was like, sign me up, I'm in. Because it's one of the most areas that aren't discussed. It's an area that is merging in regards to all of our science and neuroscience. So we've got way more information now than we had in the past. And what we know, Rita, is that that time in utero, I mean, the first 3 years, but we'll focus on the sort of the 9 months of pregnancy, if we carry for 9 months, shapes and forms who we become. So,
I find that just so fascinating. It's like magic. It's like my brain is just sparking with tell me more. I'm so intrigued
and I think
in this.
the misunderstood part of it is like we give birth and we think that our babies are born on that day, and everything then post that is considered. And it's like, what about that 9 months when that baby was in neutral, connected, interconnected, because I think that's a word we need to use, interconnected to mum, feeling everything she feels, having the same level of hormones, adrenaline, cortisol present that's in mum's system and flows into babies. And then that environment plus the relationship shapes and forms the development of the brain and nervous system. And I just think like, wow, if we could just start then to understand, one, when we're faced, like if we think about being a clinician, right? We often face with children who are a little bit older when they come to see us, or families who are searching for support, therapeutic supports, or whatever support service they need. And it's because we're seeing a behaviour or a trait or whatever we want to call it. But there's not often a discussion around, how that 9 months may have impacted the child, the brain, the nervous system, and why the behavior might be present in that moment. And I suppose I was blown away. I went over to America, I reckon probably about 20 years ago. I flew over to America 20 years ago when neuroscience wasn't really a huge field. It was like in
Mm.
America, there was a lot of discussions around it, and learning more about the brain and how it develops, and some of the key points to consider. And I went into a workshop and I was like blown away, thinking this is something that's like, I've not heard this before. And one of the things I was blown away by was, pretty much 5 days post conception, right? When we don't even
Five
know that,
days.
5 days post conception, when we don't often even know we're pregnant. Anything
Mm.
that happens to mum happens to baby from there on in.
And we don't even know that we're pregnant yet.
We don't even know we're pregnant. So when we talk about,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, and when we talk about sort of, intergenerational trauma, and I know that's probably a discussion for another time, but intergenerational trauma and how that's passed down epigenetically and on a cellular sort of level, we have all of that to consider too. But in that 9 months,
Mm.
if we think about what families go through in 9 months, right? Like, and I'm not talking about a family with complex trauma. I'm talking about any family. But if we think about what a woman may go through in that 9 months, and it could be anything from their own trauma experience in the past that's still present, because we know how that works, and it heightens at times of vulnerability, and pregnancy is one of those. But then we also have relationships that change and develop through pregnancy. We have health to be considered in regards to sort of, that we have, some people have morning sickness, some people have complications. And then on top of that, we also know that in the world that we live in, things like domestic violence, alcoholism, drug addictions of any sort, also can increase in pregnancy because of the vulnerability of the woman.
Mm.
Think about
Mm.
that externally, right? To the, people go, that's external to the womb environment, but it's not, because mum and baby are interconnected. So whatever's happening in the external environment, whether it be stresses, whether it be health conditions, whether it be pregnancy-related conditions, that's also happening to baby. And I always say to parents, like, my first conversation when I meet someone and they're like, my child, is really struggling, we've got huge behaviors, and I always we should go back to tell me about before pregnancy in the first 9 months. Like, tell me what happened.
Wow.
Tell me what it felt like for you, mum. Like, what was, not what did it feel like for everybody else? Because although the environment is impactful, it's impactful because it's flown through, it's coming through mum, flows through mum to baby.
So what did it feel like when the mother found out that when she was pregnant, or what was how
Yeah,
did she feel before
yeah,
conception?
all of it, right? So, like, are we looking at, was
Mm.
a struggle before? We know some people struggle to conceive. We know that they've had previous
Mm.
births. We know that maybe this is like a really scary time. There's uncertainty, there's apprehension, there's surprise. I want to know that part of it, because then I'm also going to be able to sort of, really start to understand what was happening early on in that, 5 days post conception. Like, when you found out you're pregnant, how did it feel? And then I find out about each trimester, and I dig deep, Rita, and I say
Mm.
to parents, like, I'm going to be asking questions that you're probably thinking, what on earth? Like, if you have no understanding about why it's
Mm.
important. So I explain that part, because what I want to know is what when your baby was born into the world, was the world a safe place, or is the world a scary place? Right? And that stems from 9 months.
Describe safe. What
Um, yeah. So what I would be
describe safe?
okay. So if I think about safe, right? So obviously safety can feel a little bit different for everybody. There's a bit of a continuum of what that feels like, depending on your
Mm.
experiences. What I would say is, are they was there moments, and this is what I look for. Were there moments where we would have a sort of optimal amount of adrenaline and cortisol, all of our sort of hormones and neurochemicals? Was there a period where that was optimal, right? If that was the case, then there's likelihood that the baby would have been feeling interconnected. Mum would have been feeling safe. So when mum's safe, baby equally feels safe. So, like,
Mm.
what was that like, right? And for mum, she may never feel safe, Rita. Like, what is the best? What's our baseline? Like, what have we? Some people I see have never, ever, ever experienced a sense of safety in the whole life. Well, we know that if mum's not experienced that sense of safety, then baby wouldn't have experienced that either. And when they're born into the world, well, what we need for optimal growth and development, even in 9 months, right? What we need for our brain to develop optimally is an optimal level of, adrenaline and cortisol and all of the hormones that are going to help us to be socially engaged, that are going to help us to have an optimal condition for our brains and our bodies to develop in. And if we don't have that, then what we have is we have a brain that then becomes developed, swamped pretty much in chemicals and in hormones that cause an issue in regards to sort of it doesn't develop to how we'd expect. There's changes, structural changes, right? I'm not talking just small. I'm talking like real, like structural damage. But then not only that, but as we move through trimesters, if that condition stays the same, then it alters the wiring that begins in utero. And what it does is it wires us to enter a world of fear rather than sort of, I suppose, like fear rather than love and protection and safety. And then you can imagine what happens is they're the babies that are born and you're unable to soothe them because, there's no sense of safety and human connection. They're the babies that really struggle
Mm.
to sleep or oversleep. They're the babies that, that like they're the babies that people say, hey, what I remember is either they were like really a challenge, like a real challenge, like wouldn't feed, couldn't breastfeed, and couldn't settle them no matter what we did. And then as they developed and they started, moving, and maybe milestones were slightly delayed, or there was things that were being seen that they would be like, we were just querying what might be happening. And then we have the same experience with babies who are really hypo-aroused, who are sleeping long
Mm.
periods, still struggling to feed, not crying, right? Because they live in a world where it's like, well, if I do that, I'm not going to be heard. So it starts to
Mm. Mm. Mm.
one of the challenges I actually think, Rita, and this is a real sort of quite a controversial conversation, and we won't go too deep in it now, but I actually think that we live in a world of misdiagnosis because of lack of understanding. Yeah, and again, I think
Yep,
I think if
I
we
agree.
opening up that can of worms, I think we hold that for a time that we can really have an in-depth conversation about it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
what happens is, I'm careful to use the word sort of brain damage, but it damages if a mum's been through stress, and that's led to fear and it's led to uncertainty, and her nervous system, because we're so amazingly equipped to survive the most unimaginable, it keeps us safe, right? So these spikes
Mm.
of chemicals and neurochemicals and the way that our nervous system responds to stresses and traumatic experiences, and that can look different for every person. So we don't there's not necessarily one thing that we go, did you go through that experience? This can be like small multiple moments over a 9-month period where there's not been a sense of safety. So,
Mm.
what I always then start to think is, well, if we've had that experience, and I always say, right, there's no safer place, even in the scary moments, there's no safer place for a baby than inside a womb.
Mother. Mm, mm,
Yeah, I mean, it's the most
mm,
interconnected. You'll never have that moment again. So and I always say to parents, there's a lot of shame that can be associated with this. And the reason why I talk about it is because let's ditch the shame, because our mums don't have a choice. And look, there may be choices and some decisions that
mm,
might be in that, but there's no choice about being connected, and what happens to you happens to baby, right? We don't get to choose that part. So I think
mm.
there's
No.
conversation around it, because we go, oh, what happens if I say that to mum or to dad? Or to whatever, whoever, sort of whatever partner, what happens if I say that and they take that as a that really heightens their level of shame? And I say, well, then we deal with shame, right? We sit in shame with them. We can't escape any of this, and if we just stay silent, then what we're doing is we're looking at children through a lens of purely through a lens often as of disability, often, or we're looking at a lens of trauma, and we're not understanding the complexity of both parts in this child's life forming and shaping who they become.
Mm, mm.
And it just looks, sorry,
It's
Rilla,
quite a
then
controversial topic to talk about, like, 'cause I guess we both agree that there's been overdiagnosis and misdiagnosis because there's some characteristics that are quite similar to some disabilities of children that we work with.
yeah,
And this is where what we're discussing is all quite new and relative in the world of child development. Even just reflecting on me when I had my children, yes, I carry some traumas, childhood traumas, and some of my pregnancies were very stressful. But even the birth in itself was quite stressful.
totally.
Um, as you can see, I've mentioned 3 different pivotal moments in my life and in pregnancy. I never had that awareness when I was a young mum. I just followed the guide of, "This is what you have to do. You just have to have the baby and learn to breastfeed, and off you go."
And wasn't
But
there
now it's like,
this, this whole thing around, like, we'll scan the baby to check the baby's development physically, right? But there's
mm,
no conversation about the emotional development. None. Within 9 months of pregnancy,
no.
still, even with all of the research we have now, there's still none. And I just go, wow, like, when was this a
I think
huge
they
gap?
only just really pushed, sorry to interrupt you. I feel like the only field that they pushed for connection was just literally skin to skin to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
the breast milk stimulated. Yeah.
Totally.
But the
Medicine.
more work I've done, yeah, from a
Mhm,
medical perspective,
mhm.
but skin to skin
Yeah,
is crucial for emotional development and also building connection.
totally. So we've got,
Mm,
that all of this, all of these things to think about. And I then, and I suppose that's what I was going to sort of say before is, we then go, after we've had this 9 months experience, that then shapes and forms how we attach, right? So I mean,
mm,
we're not just born, and then there's this, well, there is an assumption, isn't there, that every mum and or every parent is ready to attach, right? Like that this attachment
mm,
and bonding will just take place. Well, absolutely no, that doesn't happen. Can happen,
mm,
can happen, and there's plenty of secure attachment, but there's also plenty of attachment that's not secure, right? And it's like,
mm,
don't get surprised when we've got a baby who is not trusting the world. Let's not get surprised that skin to skin becomes really hard, right? Or connection becomes
mm,
really, impossible, because every time mum or whoever goes over to soothe the baby and the baby cries louder, it reinforces often past experiences for parents of not being good enough and not being able to. And then we live in a world of judgment. So there's so many
Mm.
factors. And I think I get saddened to think that I think our medical model is super important. And I think they've got that, they've got that bit. But I think we've got way more work that needs to be done to help parents to understand fully, that the whole child relationship and experience. Because otherwise, when the child is struggling with behaviours, which is what we see, right? So this manifests into behaviour, and it will manifest into obviously an unmet need, and then the child
Mm.
get their unmet need met, and the parent will be often quite resistant to that because there's a level of control needed because both have had this unsafe experience. And these children get and again, it's this is another day, but children then get labeled with challenging behaviors,
Mm.
get labeled again with different diagnoses that actually might only really help us to make sense of one part, rather than going, yeah, like the child's brain has been structurally damaged because of these experiences, no fault of anyone, because we don't get choice in that part. But actually, trauma has created that. Trauma has created the structural damage to the brain, and there's not a
Mm.
diagnosis
Mm.
helpful currently to explain all of those things. So, like, it is, yeah,
Yeah.
huge, huge.
It's huge, it's huge. Again, I'm just, like, reflecting back in my time when I was pregnant that the medical model really focused on overall physical wellness, particularly because I was quite sick with my youngest. There was
Mm,
some bouts with, how's your emotional health? I feel we need to talk more about that and provide the support so mothers can be felt seen, heard, and acknowledged and
mhm,
not carry that shame. Because let's be real, when you
mhm.
have the baby, we want the best for our baby, but the emotional burden that we never discuss because it's
Yeah,
taboo, that
yeah,
when we can't openly say, I'm really struggling here, I'm really struggling to breastfeed, because how dare you, as a
mhm.
mum, say that? You should be grateful that your baby's here. But
Yes.
why should mothers carry that? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Oh, 100%. Like, I think that we don't talk, we don't get the support, right? The support's not there. I don't think it is. And I think
Mm,
that you're lucky to get it. You're lucky to get that sort of support. And if you have,
mm,
postnatal care relationships crucial to feeling safe enough to discuss these topics. Well, a lot of people in the positions that are supporting, parents after birth, aren't necessarily trained to be able to hold space for someone to feel safe enough to discuss their concerns. And I think that there's I just as an example, Rita, and I know I probably mentioned this last time because this is like a real this really gets me, is like, look, right, we live in a society where we've got masses of trauma, right? We've got a huge, I mean, mental health is like what it's actually the big, like, we look at our services are pretty much swamped, or
it's
prison
huge.
services are swamped, and I say that like interconnectedly. um but what really
Mm,
annoys me is, right, the government and the country are saying, hey, we want to make sure that people are okay, we're gonna create more services. But actually, we also then look at our maternity leave policy, which is absolutely crap, right? If you really want to start
mm,
you want to start creating change, you start with relationship, you start with early attachment. We get this part secure, and then the rest will be obviously way less. But we don't.
mm,
It's not to say everyone wants to stay home. I'm not making that suggestion either. What I'm saying is we should be able to have choice. Like, the most important job in the world is being a parent, but there is no support for us to
mm.
do. Yeah, not everyone is
Agree.
in a position of,
100%.
I'm not going back to work. And like, I speak to parents where they're like, you know what, Donna, when I dropped my baby off 6 weeks old or 8 weeks old to daycare, it felt like I had lost like half of my heart. half my heart went that day. And it's like we shouldn't even
Mm.
be in a position of having to do that, right? Like these should be choices. And people would say, well, there is choice. Well, it depends on how you look at it and what lens you look through as
Yeah.
to how much
What does
choice we.
choice mean? Mm.
Yeah. And I just think, if we could just support parents to take care of their baby for the first 3 years of life, we'd live in a different world. And then,
Are there studies being done on that now, like the impact of mothers returning back to work at an earlier phase, or even parents returning back to work, and the impact?
there would have been. There would have been. I haven't looked, but definitely, because we know the
Yeah.
impact, right? We see it. We see, we drop our babies
Mm.
off, cared for by a stranger, and then we wonder why they're not trusting in the world. Like, come on, what are we? We're not naive to this. We're not stupid to this. We do it because there may be no choice,
Mm.
because maybe the parents
Mm.
will be home, and that is, there's some choice in that. Um, but we're missing relationship in the world, right? The biggest pain, like I said last time we caught up, and this is a full circle, hey? But the last time we caught up, I watch it. I watch people go around disconnected. Well, if we can start with strong connection at the start, we're way more likely to have it for the rest of our life. And we're missing it, currently
Yeah.
missing it. So I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of good things being done, but I think there's shitloads to go. And
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about it is the start, right? Like, putting it out there. And I do that on my free events. I have a conversation around, sometimes we don't even know who we are because we don't understand our past. Well, like, let's start there, right? Let's start making sense of what that was like for us. Because until we've done that bit, then it's really hard to understand what that's like for our children.
Donna, I love that we're having this conversation, because it comes, I think self awareness comes from education and being aware of why you behave a certain way, and then having ownership that I am this way because of something
Totally.
that may have happened in my past or so. But naturally, I'm feeling a sense of, this could be a childhood wound coming up, but in this discussion, I'm feeling guilt. I'm
Mm,
feeling shame because I wasn't aware of what we're discussing when I was pregnant. And I have this inkling in me thinking, did I transfer anything to my daughters? And I'm sure many listeners thinking, what could I have done
yeah.
during my pregnancy, or even just before I wanted to have a baby, to limit, we can't get rid of it, but to limit the impact or reduce the impact on our babies. So
And I
it's
think
such
that's
a challenging question, but I would love your perspective on that.
And I think that's a really beautiful reflection, Rita. And I'd say you definitely did transfer lots to your babies, right? Good, good,
Mm,
good. Good. Depends on how we want to look at it, but real,
mm,
really big experiences, and experiences that might not feel as safe, right? That for all of us, we're going to do that. We don't get to choose those things. Um, but what I always say is, I actually think that, when we talk about early intervention, right, there's this buzzword, isn't there?
yeah,
Everyone's like early intervention, and we've
buzzword.
the same thing for early intervention, right? And I'm like, what are we doing? What is early? We're talking about early intervention in regards to early life experience and intervening there. Early intervention in right. I actually believe that what we need is a village to be created around pregnant mums,
Yeah,
right? That's
agree, 100%.
really important. But when a lady is pregnant, we need a village to be created around her, where she can have the support, both physical and emotional, mental health support, to be taken care of and to reduce the stress that she's going through. Right? It's a big task, because some people live in a really scary world. But if we can do that, and if we can acknowledge
Mm,
that, people are working up until like 4 weeks before they're due to give birth. Well, if you're in a really stressful job,
yeah,
your baby's stressed, right? If you have major milestones, and it's not to say you're not dealing with stress, of course you are, but your body will react to stressful environments, right? You might be really, really good at regulating in sort of dysregulation, but that doesn't mean that things aren't raised in your system to get you through those experiences. And I think knowing it, and knowing when our babies are born, that they may have had these stressful moments, and the extra love and connection and attention is so vital and so, to give it at those moments, and the extra support services to help our parents to do so, right?
Mm.
And again, this is a story for another time, but rather than sort of people stepping in, services stepping in saying, hey, we don't think your parenting is good enough, right? Like we don't think that this, because a lot of parents are judged upon their
Mm.
parenting. Rather
All
than
the time.
doing that, saying, what can I do and what can I give you? What do you need from us to be able to connect safely to your baby? We're missing those vital services.
It's like where they're judged for how they are parenting, but not supported to support their own need. Because when we support one's needs, we're then supporting a child's need.
Totally. That's
Crazy, isn't it, Donna?
these are the missing services, hey? And I know that the
Yeah.
services are trying to do that bit of work. Like there's some fantastic services. Um, but it's big, hey? Like let's not, if and I always say
Yeah.
this, right? It's
It's fun.
really sorry, you go, Rita.
That's okay. No, it's funny because we stop work at like, or we go on maternity leave at 36 weeks just to wait for the baby to arrive. But let's be real, we're there getting the baby room ready. We're wrapping up things in our home to nesting even. And that's highly stressful. It's like we need that time off from our
Yes.
paid employment to get
Yeah.
ready for the baby. And next minute, 2 weeks later, your water's breaking and baby's here in 2 weeks. It's funny you spoke about village. A close friend of mine just gave birth last week, and it was quite a traumatic birth for her. And she called me yesterday in tears because her mother had to go back to
Oh,
work, and that support was no longer available for her. And the message of I'm feeling fatigued, I'm not understanding my baby, he's not breastfeeding, I have to top him up because he's not drinking enough. All I was told to give him a formula just to help him sleep through the night, and he's just now I think he has colic, and it's like
yes.
all these repercussions. And now when we're talking, I think, why can't we provide more support for mothers rather than finding out what's wrong with the baby all
Yes.
the time and have that work on connection, then let's eliminate those other
100%
factors. Mm,
interconnectedness, right? Like this is what it's
mm,
about. Our babies aren't in the world alone. Well, and if they
no,
are, they're not going to be it for long. Like we need let's support mum to support baby, right? Let's support dad to
mm,
support baby too. And
mm,
I think that that's the lens that we need to shift. We need to stop going, let's look at these like what's medically wrong here. Rather than just focusing on that, obviously that's important too. Focusing on how can I support mum to feel um authentic enough to be real enough to be in the moment with her baby and to have those shared moments, because we know though this is where our co-regulation comes from, right? But if we don't hold a mum to hold their baby, co-regulation becomes
mm,
pretty poor. Like our attunement, like we have more moments of misattunement,
mm,
co-regulation becomes something that's quite scarce. And then we have a dysregulated nervous system. We have a child who grows up not knowing how to regulate. There's knock-on effects. And maybe mum's not had that experience.
mm,
Hey, we know that, right? If we just get to know someone in pregnancy, right, and our midwives and obviously our antenatal care, if they could just really build relationships, they're going to get to know these mums really well, and they're going to be able to start realizing what mum needs before they give birth. Right? We
mm,
can
mm. I agree with you with having that. So after my first daughter, I had a very traumatic birth with her, and I built this fear. I was so frightened to give birth to my second daughter. But I met an amazing midwife. I don't know if she'll ever listen, but her name is Jane. And I connected with Jane, not because she guided me physically, she just listened. She listened to my fears and pretty much said, I'm here with you the whole way. Had a successful birth with my second daughter. And then when I was pregnant with my third, I
gosh.
immediately said, I don't want no one else but Jane. And Jane
Beautiful,
held my hand, spoke with me through all my fears, and my third pregnancy, my daughter just fell out. Like, it was just the most beautiful birth,
isn't it? It shows
and
what the
it was
importance.
so beautiful, my birth with her, and just the connection after she breastfed well, and I reflecting on the 3, it was my best pregnancy and my best birth because I had someone that was informed, but listened and held my hand the whole time pretty much. And every mother deserves that. Every mother deserves that.
Yeah, and that's what I think, that's what we're robbed of. We don't necessarily have that, and that's not to say that. And I
Mm,
actually think that people aren't trained to be able to give that. Like, like a lot of our midwives have no understanding
mm,
around emotional need, but they're pretty good at the physical side of delivery and support. When I had my
mm,
twins, like I've got four children, but then fell pregnant with twins, and I was like, how does this even work? How can I even do this? Like,
mm,
am I big enough? And I don't mean physically, I just mean like, can I hold this and have my other two children on top? And I remember,
mm,
being little and no support. And I thought, if I didn't know what I knew and have my support, my internal support network around me, that would have been a real, real challenge. And I just
mm,
think there's
mm,
always out there who don't have that. And then there's judgment around, these, we talk about mobile phones and what that's done. And then we have these parents who are like really wrapped up in what's happening outside of their world. And I say, hey, let's take the judgment away from that. It causes lots of complications, but they need that to escape this, right?
mm,
How can we help people to stay in it without escaping it? Because that's what happens, right? We start to then escape our reality because our reality becomes too hard being alone in
mm,
it. But we weren't meant to bring up children alone, right? I mean, look at our villages around the world. We've got countries that do it way better than we do it because the village
mm.
and it's accepted. We've
It's
lost our
like my
village
grandmother. How did my grandmother have 9 children
because
and
she had a village.
manage it all while my grandfather was in the army?
Mhm.
Well, really, there was a village. The village supported her, and her
Yeah,
mental health was stable, like, supported because she had people who understood and guided her as well. But yeah, we don't have villages here in our current times. No,
we don't
at
have a
all.
village. And I think that, if someone was to say to me, what service do you think would create more change in the world than any other? I'd say to you, a village. And it would need, there's lots of ways it could look, but it would be a village that's created where people can have multiple levels of support and it be a service that's like a wraparound service. Like, I do believe that if we want to start to
Mm,
decrease mental health and we want to decrease our
mm,
rate of suicide and addiction and all of the things that come with those experiences, then we need to start thinking about this village early on in life. Not
the
systems
reality
in life, but early on.
Yeah, the reality, though, it's not realistic to have a village like how they had it in the past. Can we encourage parents to access a village or a community on from an online service, or even, is it like specific groups they can
Lots.
access?
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways that a
Mm,
village can be created. Don't think it needs to be,
mm,
in the same area, but I think that definitely needs to be considered. And then we consider who needs to be in the village, right?
mm.
What
Yeah,
do
who?
we need someone
Exactly.
who can lead us? And what I mean by that is, who's done it before, who can hold space. We need someone who can support us and be there with us without any, sharing of any knowledge. Like, there's multiple levels of who we normally have in the past in our village, and I think that we can create a similar sort of experience here. It's needed. It's needed.
Mm, mm.
Desperately needed. So there's a
You mentioned earlier the impact of cortisol. I'm intrigued. When a mother's stressed, her cortisol level spikes. From your understanding,
yeah.
what's the impact of that when the baby for the fetus?
Okay. So the fetus their brain becomes wired around fear. So their tolerance and their nervous
Mm,
system become it changes, right? So it starts to get swamped in cortisol, which means that we have a change to the structure, the development, actual physical development of the brain.
mm,
But it also heightens the arousal, right? And again, we can see a lot of this now when we do scans. The movement, fetal
mm,
movement becomes stronger, increases, because what happens is it goes into the baby's system and the baby reacts similar, or the same as what mum would be reacting to in their experience.
mm,
We we have a real, affects our nervous system, affects our tolerance. And you know what, again, I think this is something that we don't consider enough when we see children who have got um, intolerable or tolerance challenges. We assume, there's an assumption that we know where that's from, but it can be from actually a nervous system that's just been, wired around
Mm.
around fear. And right, we have to have cortisol, but an optimal level for optimal growth. And adrenaline,
Mm. Mm.
adrenaline's a killer. Like we know it is. We
It
know that
is.
heart pounds way faster. And again, all of this can be seen in utero, like, pounds way faster when we've got more adrenaline in our system because it's obviously speeding us up to keep safe, right? Well, a baby inside utero doesn't have
Mm.
room to move, but adrenaline's still present and it impacts
Crushing.
massively. Yeah, yeah,
Mm. So, in terms of supporting families, we know creating a village, listening to the parents, providing that connection, fostering supportive relationships. What can we offer to, or what can we encourage parents to do after the baby's born? Would it be also recognizing and healing and dealing with their own traumas so they can then manage or support their child through their development? I feel like it's such a
yeah.
vast area, Donna. There's no black and white answer, but just
Yes.
more. There's more to it than just emotional support.
Acknowledgement, right? Acknowledgement of the intergenerational aspect of trauma, and I think the acknowledgement of that, again, not necessarily to change it, because healing again is another topic, right? Not necessarily to change it,
Mm.
but acknowledge it, because when we can acknowledge it inside of us, we can acknowledge it inside of those around us, like our children. And that's the key, because we can connect in it, Rita. And I think for so long there's been this like, I must do work by myself to heal. Well, my lens is saying, but I actually think that the healing becomes part of this experience, this dyadic, triadic, however we want to look at it, becomes part of that experience, and the healing happens here. I see this in me and I see this in you simultaneously, right? Because that shared experience helps massively. Otherwise, then we become focused on my child is the issue. All
Mm.
right, and that's how it can manifest and develop. We look at the child with the behavior who's trying to get their unmet need met, and that then can become a real distraction or disruption. So,
Mm.
having the knowledge, um, understanding, like really thinking about our past. A lot of us don't even know what pregnancy was like. Some people say to me, Donna, I'm never going to find out my mum's past or my dad's past, or, like there's no one who can tell me what that's like. And then I start to say, hey, tell me a little bit about tell me about now. Tell me about now, because I
Mm.
can help you to understand then. Because it shapes, informs
Yeah.
us, and not only us, but our future relationships, Rita. So when we see patterns, we can work back.
Absolutely. It just makes sense. To me, it makes sense because I've gained a greater awareness of
Yeah.
trauma and development and how behaviors exhibit. I know we've mentioned about the whole idea of misdiagnosis. We're not disregarding a child's diagnosis, but more let's have awareness to support both.
Totally.
Both.
And that's
Yeah.
and that's the challenge, right? Because I do think that there is more awareness now, but because disability
Mm.
services focus on disability and mental health services focus on mental health, people go, I don't want to talk too
Mm.
much about crossover, because the crossover is like this grey area of like who funds what for services.
Yeah.
Um,
Funding. Oh,
Mm. So what I'd say is, yeah, let's have an awareness, right? Let's have an awareness as to why there might be presenting symptoms that are crossed over, or there might be something else that we need to also consider in regards to services that are provided to our children and families, because it's them that are going
mm.
to miss out if we don't do this bit of work.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned the concept of services. So, is this like, would they go to psychology, occupational therapy, or is this something we would need to access through services like, so of interplay? I guess parents, I think it comes with education comes awareness, but now they want a forward plan. What's the plan that we can encourage parents to do if they feel there's a sense that they want to support their own emotional well-being and their child?
All right. I do. I mean, Interplay. I created Interplay because I felt like there was a gap in the service, right? So something like Interplay then
Mm.
helps the dyadic, so sort of mum and child, or dad and mum, or dad and child, to understand not only their own world but the world of those around them, right? So that's one service that can
Mm.
help. But I actually don't think it's necessarily, Rita, about the service. It's about the person offering the
Okay.
service, right? And I say this all the
Oh,
time.
interesting.
Yeah, I don't think this is about service. I think this is about the person offering it. And I know that then that there'll be people watching this going, what? But I actually truly do believe that. And I believe that you get the best from a service relationally and physically and emotionally when you feel connected safely to the practitioner, facilitator, clinician in front of you. So, what I say to parents is, if you have someone in your life that you're already working with and you feel super connected to them, I wouldn't be doing anything quick to change that.
Mm.
So, it doesn't matter whether you're a speech therapist or whether you're an occupational therapist, although you're focusing on something quite different in regards to your work. The relationship is, in my eyes, one of the things that matters most. And you
100%. I
can find that outside
Yeah,
of
I
profession.
agree, and I always tell parents, I might not be the speech therapist for you, and
Yeah,
that is okay. That is
yeah.
so okay. In
Oh,
connection with yourself as a caregiver and with your child, for
yeah,
me, is paramount to treatment success.
beautiful.
And we need to work on that. And I guess this is where the frustrating bit with limited services, waiting list, parents are just need speech therapy, so they'll just take it because their child needs a service. But will the
Mm.
service be implemented effectively if you don't have the
No,
connection? And to me, no, it
no,
won't.
the answer is no, absolutely. We see it. We
Yeah,
see it.
yeah,
There's research to tell us it
yeah.
wouldn't be. And I think that's the key. And I always say to parents, this relationship I'm talking about doesn't just happen in a professional capacity.
Mm,
And that's what we've also got to hold on to. And I'm not disputing professionals, because we've all got our knowledge base and it's all really important.
yeah.
That doesn't, and I see, Rita, people who are part of a community, or it could be a religious organization, or whatever it be, who might not be trained in a specific modality, right, or profession,
Mm,
but are so healing that it blows me away. So I think we've also got that bit wrong. But again, it's
mm.
a conversation for another day, I
It's a whole
think.
new topic.
It's
Yeah,
it. And that's a passionate one of mine. But I think that we misunderstand services, and I think relationships are crucial. We know it.
yeah,
We know
yeah.
it.
Connection is important. Supportive groups are important. Believing in yourself is important. Don't carry the shame. Learn where the shame is streaming from, the guilt. Work on that.
Don't
Support your
hide.
child.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back down to, what are your values? What do you value? To work on your values, and then that can then have the ripple effect with your child. Yeah, this is a very huge topic. But I guess what I'm so privileged with having you here today, Donna, is that we're having the conversation and
Oh,
people are listening and they're starting to think things differently, just in a different way to what we have been
mhm.
raised to think, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
totally. And I think that's what we, that's why, when you offered me to jump on here with you, is um, I wasn't going to miss it, because this is about awareness, and it's about saying to
mm,
people, this isn't about saying everyone's going to think the same, right? We'd live in a bit of a crazy world if we did. We don't.
absolutely not.
But
No.
what we want to do is we want to say, hey, have you considered these parts, so you can make an informed decision? So you get to understand, and you can choose what area and what you believe, but you can't do that if you don't have choice.
Yeah,
Let,
I
let's
agree.
give let's give them it. And I think we live in a world where we're trying to hide from, obviously, our experiences that feel uncomfortable, but we're happy if they feel good. We live in a
Mm,
world where we don't want, there's certain feelings that are, I'm all right when I feel like this, but when I feel like this, I'm going to run. We want parents to be able to sit in this
mm,
part. Like, that shame's not going to disappear overnight. How do we turn up in it?
mm.
How do we see ourselves
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
shame? Like, how do we understand it? Where's it from? How can I carry it? How can I welcome it every time it pops up for me?
Mm, yeah, yeah. Donna, if someone that's pregnant now is listening,
Yeah.
what's very simple advice you could offer them to soothe them after hearing what we've discussed?
I would say to them, take time out, right? And when I mean time out, what I mean is create the environment. You create your environment. And that's difficult when you're interconnected with partners and with work and with everything else in society. But my advice would be to take moments out where you can create the environment that you want for you and your unborn baby. And that can be done. And it could be literally lying, sitting down for a period with no distraction. Yeah, interconnecting, like really remembering that we have, a baby inside us, and that we are, a vessel that's carrying our
Mm.
child, and that we are so
That's so
important.
beautiful. You create your own environment. Don, but that doesn't even relate to pregnancy. That even relates with your family structure. You create the environment where you can feel safe, heard, belonging,
Yeah,
connection,
yeah.
and understand those external factors that can impact your environment. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
totally.
yeah.
So then you become more aware, but you can also have moments, like I said earlier on, the safest place for a baby is inside a mum's womb, even when it's not safe.
Mm,
It's pretty crazy stuff.
it says a lot. And what does that say about
You're
connection?
doing an amazing job. Like I truly go, wow, women are amazing.
Yeah. We don't
What
get
the
enough credit because I feel we carry so much societal
totally.
expectations, and to just get that baby bod back, and to meet the needs, rush back to work. But
Yeah,
we've got it wrong. We so have it wrong. Yeah.
yeah. We've lost the
Yeah.
plot
Don-
on it.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
We have. Donna, it has been an absolute joy having you back on again today. I have loved it, and I just can't wait for the episode to be released for people to listen and just learn so much from your wisdom. And I would love to have you back again next year in 2025 to talk about a hot topic of intergenerational trauma. You know what? We should do like a two-part series because it's going to be
Yeah.
a cracker
Huge.
of an episode. Yeah, I feel let's reconnect. Let's reconnect
Yes.
in 2025 and talk about more raising awareness about trauma, healing, and the most importantly, connection.
Absolutely. Rita, thank you so much. And what an amazing what was this, your 34th podcast?
34th episode. Yeah.
34th
Yeah.
episode. So, also hats off to you for that because that's a big task. But so
Appreciate
needed.
it.
So needed.
So neat. Donna, as I said in our first episode, when I wrap up, I ask my guests one word to change them to be a better version of themselves today. Now, I believe last time you said connection. So, would you
Mm,
like to give our listeners another word with how you can be a better version of yourself tomorrow?
protection.
What was that,
Protection.
sorry?
Protection. To protect yourself.
Oh,
To create
protection.
protection. I think it fits beautifully with what we've been talking
Love
about.
that. Oh, I love that. It sure has. It sure has. Well, thank you everybody for listening to Wine with Wita and for listening throughout 2024. I hope I have increased your awareness, made you think differently, but also figured out ways not only for yourself to be seen, but also your voice and your child's voice to be heard. I wish you a beautiful and safe Christmas and a remarkable 2025. And I look forward to bringing more Wine with Wita magic very soon. Take care, everybody, and look after yourself. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Wine with Wita. I hope you found some new inspiration, learnt something new, or gained a fresh perspective. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be so grateful if you please leave a 5-star review, as it really helps the show get in the ears of new listeners, plus it takes 5 seconds. If you're keen for more strategies and insights, then head over to Instagram and follow RS Speech Pathology.